Grandpa Bernard was 84, hard of hearing, and mildly obsessed with birdwatching. He opened his front door expecting a package from QVC, only to be shoved to the ground by two pastel polo zealots waving clipboards and shouting about emergency shrub compliance. He broke his arm trying to shield his parakeet. 3 days later, I returned from basic training, and I brought spreadsheets, legal codes, and unholy vengeance. My name's Daniel Cooper, and I don't take kindly to fake authority, especially when it lands my grandpa in the hospital. After I finished my stint with the Army Reserves, I moved back to Lavender Heights, a retirement-heavy suburb with pastel houses, suspiciously quiet streets, and no formal HOA. That's what Grandpa Bernard loved about it. Unfortunately, a group calling themselves the Lavender Property Standards Task Force had recently begun enforcing rules that didn't exist, founded, chaired, and violently enforced by one Patricia Peton, a woman who once spray-painted no whimsy on a neighbor's Halloween decorations. She wasn't elected. She wasn't legal, but she had laminated badges and a god complex. Patricia and her polo shirt thugs, 3 other retirees, and a man named Gary, who wasn't even a resident, had decided Lavender Heights needed order. They printed compliance notices at Staples. They built a mobile enforcement kiosk, which was just a golf cart with a label maker, and they started knocking on doors, demanding people register their landscaping or face escalated sanctions. When Bernard refused to remove his vintage garden gnome, Patricia labeled him a repeat defier and dispatched her field agents. That's when they shoved him, causing the fall that broke his arm. They claimed he lunged with aggressive statuary. I claimed war. The moment I got the call from the hospital, something inside me shifted. My grandpa, the man who taught me to tie my shoes and build model airplanes, was lying in a hospital bed because some power-hungry wannabe dictator decided his lawn ornament was a threat to society. I set up shop at Grandpa's kitchen table with a laptop, a Bluetooth headset, and a giant cup of righteous fury. First things first, I needed evidence. I started with Bernard's doorbell camera footage. The video was crystal clear. 2 middle-aged men in matching powder blue polos complete with homemade badges that looked like they came from a craft store clearance sale approaching the door. You could hear them shouting about immediate compliance required and threatening fines that didn't exist. The footage showed everything. Bernard opening the door confused holding his parakeet cage. One of the men stepping forward aggressively, clipboard raised. Bernard stepping back trying to close the door. The second man pushing past, knocking Bernard off balance, the sickening thud as my grandfather hit the ground, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. The men stepping over him to leave a bright orange violation notice on his doorstep before walking away without even checking if he was okay. I made copies, lots of copies. Then I started digging deeper. Patricia Peton had quite the digital footprint. Her Facebook page was a gold mine of self-incriminating posts, photos of her enforcement squad posing with their golf cart, status updates bragging about successful enforcement initiatives, and bringing order to chaos. She even had a Pinterest board dedicated to acceptable lawn ornament styles, which notably excluded anything fun, whimsical, or remotely interesting. The more I investigated, the more victims I found. There was Mrs. Nakamura, who received a citation for having the wrong shade of beige on her mailbox. Mr. Thompson, whose tomato plants were deemed non-compliant vegetation. The Johnsons, who were told their wind chimes constituted noise pollution even though they made no sound. Everyone had stories, but no one had fought back. They were elderly, intimidated, or simply didn't know their rights. I compiled everything into a comprehensive file. Police reports were filed for assault, battery, and criminal impersonation. I contacted the state attorney general's office and explained the situation. The representative on the phone actually laughed when I described the mobile enforcement kiosk. She assured me they took criminal impersonation very seriously, especially when it resulted in physical harm to elderly residents. Then I got creative. I set up a fake email account posing as a regional zoning official and sent Patricia an invitation to comply, a fictional compliance conference at the nearby municipal center. The email was professionally formatted, complete with an agenda featuring workshops on enhanced enforcement strategies and maximizing suburban compliance. I even created a fake registration website. Patricia RSVP'd within an hour, noting she would be bringing her entire enforcement team. The day of the fake conference, I positioned myself in the municipal center parking lot with a telephoto lens. Patricia arrived in a freshly pressed power suit, her team in matching polos with new badges that said conference delegate. They marched into the building with the confidence of people who believed they were about to network with fellow compliance enthusiasts. Instead, they were met by Deputy Sheriff Williams, who served them with cease and desist orders and criminal summons. The look on Patricia's face was priceless. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water as the deputy explained that impersonating government officials, creating fake enforcement agencies, and assaulting elderly residents were all very real crimes with very real consequences. Her team scattered like roaches when the lights come on, leaving Patricia standing alone in her power suit, clutching her fake badge. Word spread through Lavender Heights like wildfire. The Lavender Property Standards Task Force was officially declared an illegal entity by the city attorney. All laminated badges were confiscated as evidence. Patricia's golf cart was impounded for vehicular harassment, which I didn't even know was a thing, but apparently using a vehicle to intimidate residents qualifies. The label maker was taken as evidence of fraud. Neighbors who'd been too afraid to speak up started coming forward with their own horror stories. Tales of backyard trespassing at all hours, lawn measurements at 2 in the morning with flashlights and measuring tapes, and one poor gentleman whose bird bath was deemed a water hazard and destroyed with a croquet mallet. Mrs. Peterson showed photos of her prized rose bushes that had been cut down because they exceeded the arbitrary height limit Patricia had invented. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from multiple homes showed the fake enforcement team trespassing, harassing residents, and destroying property. One video captured Patricia herself spray painting citation on a resident's driveway because they hadn't responded to her fake notices within 24 hours. Another showed Gary, who we discovered lived 3 towns over and just enjoyed bullying people, throwing garden decorations into a truck while shouting about aesthetic violations. The district attorney's office took the case seriously, very seriously. What had started as a neighborhood nuisance had escalated to multiple felonies. Assault on an elderly person, criminal impersonation, vandalism, trespassing, harassment, and fraud were just the beginning of the charges. Patricia's own social media posts served as confessions, documenting dates, times, and victims of her enforcement actions. During the investigation, we discovered Patricia had been collecting fines from residents. She'd set up a post office box and was having people mail checks to the Lavender Property Standards Task Force. Over $18,000 had been collected from frightened elderly residents who thought they were paying legitimate fines that added mail fraud and elder financial abuse to her growing list of charges. The trial was swift. Patricia's defense attorney tried to argue she was providing a community service that she genuinely believed she was helping maintain property values. The prosecutor countered with Bernard's x-rays showing his broken arm and played the doorbell footage of the assault. Witness after witness testified about harassment, property damage, and intimidation. Mrs. Nakamura broke down crying as she described how Patricia had made her feel unsafe in her own home. Patricia maintained her composure until the guilty verdict was read. Then came the sentencing. 3 years in state prison for assault causing bodily harm to an elderly person. 2 years for criminal impersonation to run concurrently. $50,000 in restitution to be divided among her victims. A permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of any Lavender Heights resident. Her real estate license was revoked, ending her career as a property manager. As the judge read the sentence, Patricia's face went from red to white to a strange purple color. She stood up and shouted that we'd all regret this when our property values plummeted, that chaos would reign without her enforcement. The bailiff had to physically escort her from the courtroom as she ranted about the coming aesthetic apocalypse of Lavender Heights.